value of your company, then that would hurt you when you're trying to sell it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great observation. So, essentially, at the end of the day, you want your financial forms or these records to properly indicate how much money is coming in and how much money is going out, and really how much your company is worth. So to do that, you just want to make sure that throughout the year your accounting equation is perfectly balanced. If there's any imbalance in there, you know that there's an error and there's something in there that you need to fix in order to balance that back out. So, the first form that we're going to go over is the balance sheet. So if you flip the page, the next sheet that I've given to you is an example of a balance sheet. Or this is just kind of an example company. But you can look at that and kind of see how a balance sheet is kind of laid out generally. So here we're going to go over what is a balance sheet, first of all, and second of all, why it's beneficial to us or why it's important. Chelsea, can you read that first bullet point there?
The balance sheet is designed to show you a picture of your assets and liabilities, which is debts, at a point in time.
Okay. And then do you want to read the second point there?
Sure. A balance sheet is considered a snapshot of the assets a company owns, the debt it owes, and how much it's worth.
So essentially, you want to consider the balance sheet as kind of a snapshot in time. So at any given moment, the balance sheet is going to indicate how much a company owns and how much a company owes. So essentially, at that moment of time, if I take the balance sheet on July 21st, I know on July 21st exactly how much that company is worth. So it kind of just gives us a broad statement of how much it owns, how much it owes, and how much it's worth. So as you can see listed out here, we've got the three different parts. The first part is going to list out its assets. The second part is going to list out the liabilities. And the third part is going to list out the owner's equity, which is, like we've talked about, assets minus your liabilities. So what you have minus what you owe.
So the stockholders' equity is what the company's worth.
Exactly. At the end of the day.
After the debts and their assets.
Exactly. So the three main components, like we've seen here, we've got assets, liabilities, and equity. So those are kind of the three main components. So if I can get you guys to take anything away from what a balance sheet is, I want you to know that the three main components there are assets, liabilities, and equity. So Marcy, why is it important that we know what a company's assets, liabilities, and equities are?
Well, you've got to know what you can put into it, what you can take out of it, just how viable it really is, and where you need to maybe make tweaks and checks with it. If you know that it's a healthy business, you're okay. If you can see that there's problems, then you know where to fix.
Yeah. And can you see why this would be an important form for any potential investor to look at? If I'm looking at investing in company A, I can take this form and know on that given day that this is how much that company is worth. And this is something that may be beneficial for me to get a part of. But if I look at this balance sheet and see that they owe way more than they're bringing in, or what they have, I know that that's something that I need to stay away from. So that's an important form there. So do you guys have any questions about the balance sheet?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Moving right along. The next one that we have is the income statement. So, Chelsea, can I get you to read the first two bullet points there?
The income or profit and loss statement tells you the performance of your company. The financial statement that reports the revenues and expenses for a period of time, such as a year or a month. Okay.
So this statement, like it says on the bottom, provides an overview of your company's earnings. So basically it just itemizes out how much, basically how much you're bringing in through your revenues or from your sales versus how much money is leaving in expenses. So, for instance, I might be bringing in a lot of money through sales if I'm a clothes department, through selling clothes. but then it also will tell me how much I'm having to spend on renting out a building to sell the clothes, how much money I'm paying in my electricity bills or in my paying my employees. So it kind of itemizes that out so that I can see exactly how much money I'm giving to certain areas within my company. So the four main components of the income statement. So just like the balance sheet had the assets, liabilities, and equity, the income statement has these four essential components as well. So Marcy, would you like to read what those four components are of the income statement?
Sure. Operating income, operating expenses, non-operating income, and non-operating expenses.
Okay. So if you guys want to take a peek at your example here, it has basically a very generalized example of what an income statement should entail. The first is going to be the sales of good, or the gross profit. That is the operating income. So through your actual hands-on operations, this is how much money your company's bringing in. Gross profit essentially just says this is how much money we have before we take out our expenses. So the second part is the operating expenses. So hands-on, how much money you have to pay in order to keep your company running. So you've got things like selling, administration, buying office supplies, office equipment. Those are the types of things that you need for your day-to-day transactions in order to keep your business up and running. So operating is more hands-on, and then you've got non-operating, which is basically things that are happening without having like a hands-on approach. So at the bottom you have non-operating, so you've got interest revenues, so how much money you are getting from investments that you make as a company, your sale of investments, and then also you've got interest expenses, which is an non-operating expense. So it's basically, if I take a loan from the bank to keep my company running, the interest that is being gathered or amortized on that loan, that's a non-operating expense. So at the bottom of the page here, it basically tells you, after bringing in your sales and after deducting your expenses, you have your net income. So this company had $18,000, so they gained $25,000, and then they had total operating expenses of $13,000, which left them with $12,000, but then they added on $6,000 through their non-operating income. So, do you guys have any questions about what an income statement is? Okay, so just as a review, balance sheet, assets, liabilities, and equity. Income statement has operating expenses, operating income, non-operating expenses, and non-operating income. So those are the types of things that you kind of have in those two statements. So no questions?
Nope.
Okay. So, excuse me, the last form that we have to complete the trifecta is the cash flow statement. So, the main reason that any business is in business is because they want to obtain cash. That's money's the motive in the business world. So the cash flow statement, it basically explains to us how much money's coming in versus how much money's leaving. It's the form that allows business owners, business investors, or employees of a business to basically track where their money's going, because that's kind of running the minds of business owners everywhere. So, Marcy, can you read that bottom bullet point there?
The bottom one, it allows investors to understand how a company's operations are running, where its money is coming from, and how it's being spent.
So why do you think that would be something that investors would like to know?
They want to know if it's a worthwhile business to invest in.
Exactly. It lets them know how legitimate the business is. They want to know that they're not just borrowing tons of money to pump up their assets, but they're actually making a decent wage on their own and not having to borrow it, and they're not having to pay out a ton as well. They want to make sure that the company is buoyant, that it can actually sustain itself. So the cash flow statement has main components as well. So with this one, Chelsea, do you want to read those 5 points there?
Yeah, number 1, cash flows from operating activities. Number 2, cash flows from investing activities. Number 3, cash flows from financing activities. Number 4, beginning cash balance. Number 5, ending cash balance.
Okay. So what do those 5 points have in common with each other? Do you guys see a common word in there?
Cash.
Yeah.
So essentially anything that has to do with cash is in the cash flow statement. Kind of easy to remember. So if you guys want to look at your example here of the cash flow statement, at this top part we've got the cash flows from operating activities. So once again, operating activities are basically that's the hands-on approach that the company takes to running their business. So how much cash is flowing in and how much cash is flowing out. The cash that's coming in isn't indicated by just a normal sign, and the cash that's flowing out is indicated by a minus sign in front of it. And then at the bottom, you have the net cash flow from operating activities, or basically how much cash is either coming in or how much cash is leaving through your operations. Then the next one, you have investing activities. So how much money you have coming in from investments and how much you have going out from investments. And then lastly, cash flows from financing activities. You add all those together. The bottom three points are kind of the ones that everyone focuses on. You've got net change in cash. So you have basically how much cash you have different now than you had at the beginning of that certain period. And then you have the beginning cash balance, the ending cash balance. So it kind of gives you right there, if you look at the bottom, how much money the company is growing by. And a lot of investors will look at this form and compare that to usually a 3 to 5 year span to basically see if the gains or losses are on par with the other years, or if they're growing or if they're decreasing, so they can notice any trends. So do you guys have any questions about why the cash flow statement is important, or what is entailed in the cash flow statement?
Nope.
All make pretty good sense?
Yep.
Alright, so once again, to kind of just put it in perspective, the balance sheet, what are the components of the balance sheet? Do you guys remember?
Assets, liability, and equity.
Boom. Okay, and the income statement, do you guys remember what's in the income statement? You can look at your notes if you need.
You've got your operating expenses and income, and then your non-operating
Expenses and income.
Good. And then with the cash flow, you just got to remember that one word, the cash. Basically, how much cash is coming in, how much cash are we ending up with, how much cash is leaving. So, who is ready to put their learning to the test? So, to start off,
Are we? No.
we're actually going to play a game to start off. Here in this bowl, I've got a couple of questions, and then here in this bowl, I've got a bunch of candy. So, we're going to draw out a card here, and then I'm going to read you the question. The first person to come up with the right answer is going to get their choice of candy here. And so, we'll go through a couple of rounds here to see, just where it goes. So, let's start with you, Marcy, if you want to take a pick.
So are we both supposed to shout out the answer, or is it Marcy's turn?
Shout out the answer.
Okay.
Why do financial statements have to be error-free?
To show the value of the company.
Alright, there you go. So now you can pick one there.
Good on ya.
Okay. So the way we're going to do it, we got this pen here. First person to grab the pen gets the answer, so that way it makes it fair.
Alright.
Okay.
No clawing.
How many questions are there?
We'll do a couple. Okay, assets plus liabilities equals...
Oh, isn't it assets equals liability plus equity?
Alright,
Yeah, correction.
Whoops. Yeah.
We'll do 2 more rounds. What is equity?
The value of the company.
Alright.
Or what it's worth.
Yep.
I like pink.
Yeah.
No, Oh, it's her turn to
Oh,
pick.
there you go.